Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. I would like to go ahead here at the beginning of our episode, and today's episode is Law Lovers Lounge. I think that I'm about to be fired. What should I do? So that's our topic. We're in the Law Lovers Lounge series, and this is where we talk about legal issues, and I'm using my perspective and expertise as an attorney. I've been a licensed attorney since 1998, and we kind of delve into sort of general, broad ideas to try to just focus on public education. Disclaimers as always, I am not your attorney just by virtue of you taking part in this show. And this is just, again, educational or general advice. I am Courtney Anderson. I am an attorney and have been since 1998. And as always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for information about all the different things I do. But if you have legal issues, my law firm website is litigationmitigation.com. That's litigationmitigation.com. All right, so all the disclaimers aside, I also wanted to mention that this is going to be a bit of a mini episode today. We're not going to have our full half hour scheduled, and depending on how much we cover, we'll probably extend this for a second part. So we'll probably do a two-part episode on this. So here we are. We're Law Lovers Lounge, which is great because we love law, we care about these things, and our topic is, I think I'm about to be fired. What should I do? A couple of reasons. One, it's a popular issue that people talk to me about, and it's also an issue that I handle quite a bit at my law firm. So here we are. There's somebody in the world, and they believe they're about to be fired. What should they do from a legal perspective? Now, our advice is going to be talking about the law. I'm a licensed attorney in the U.S., so it's going to be based on U.S. law, and it's even more specific than that. In the U.S., lawyers are not nationally necessarily uniformly credentialed. They're credentialed by geographic region. So my profit credentials to practice law are from the state of Texas. And so my focus will be there. I do practice law in other jurisdictions, voluntary, pro bono, meaning for free. But my focus, if I'm doing legal services I deliver, they're based in Texas law. So everything I'm saying is general. Specifics of it will apply to Texas law, and I will try to make little distinctions as we go through. All right, big picture. I think I'm about to get fired. Oh, my goodness. What's happening? First question, are you an employee? Now, this may seem like a bit of an odd question. You're thinking, look, I'm about to be fired. Who cares? Well, here's where the law and reality and your life intersect. In general, in the U.S., you have two broad categories of workers, employees, right, and people who are not employees. People who are employees, or what they sound like, you're employed by, you work for someone who is your employer. The idea of the law in the U.S. in this area is largely derived from England, from Great Britain, of course, because of the history of how the U.S. became their own independent nation. All right, so here's the idea. There's an old concept, and it's in Latin. It's called respondeat superior. Respondeat superior. What does that mean? And it means generally in English that let the master answer. So respondeat superior. And I'll put all this on my website, CourtneyAnderson.com, on the show episode notes so you can see it. But it's Latin. It means let the master answer. And the idea from sort of Old English law is that, look, the master is the employer, okay? The master has servants. This is often called the master-servant law. The master has servants. Okay, so then servant is the employee. And the idea is that, look, the master has to answer for everything that their servant does, because you can just sort of think historically, right? So the master has all this land and all these resources, and they have all these masses of servants working for them. Let's say the servant goes and, oh, my goodness, the servant destroys a neighbor's property. The servant didn't mean to, but they accidentally, they broke the neighbor's property. The master has to answer for it. The master is responsible for what their servant does. What does that mean in modern times? It means if you're an employee, your employer is responsible for what you do. So there's a whole bunch of decisions that are made at work based on this law. Everything from, are you going to be able to utilize a company vehicle? Are you on the clock or off the clock? And there's a lot of decisions that are going to be made based on this whole concept that if you're an employee and you're doing your employee work, the legal term for that is you're in the scope of employment. Your employer is on the hook for anything you do. So you have to be an employee, though, for master-servant law to apply, which also is going to lead to different decisions regarding whether or not you were, quote, about to be fired. I said there are two big employee and everybody else. An employee, I just talked about this whole respondeat superior, master-servant law. The question a lot of people have is, well, how do I know? I don't know. I show up somewhere, I do something that they tell me to do there, and then they give me money, and I don't know. Okay. And the U.S., the government, the federal government, has an agency called the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Their job is to, exactly what it sounds like, deal with revenue internal to the country. People typically think of that as taxes. And the employer, remember, has to answer, right? Let the master answer. That means if their employee breaks something or causes harm to somebody else's property, but it also means that the employer, the master, is responsible for all types of things, right? Like paying taxes for their employees, right? Like they have to make sure that all of the federal taxes are properly collected, and they have to account for that. So the employer has responsibility to an employee. So the IRS has sort of come up with these sort of, well, they're not sort of, but they are guidelines. How do you know if you're an employee? I said they're employee, and there's everybody else. Everybody else, that category typically means you're not an employee. So you're often what's called a contractor. A contractor means you do not work for that employer. Who do you work for? Well, you work for some other entity. If you're called an independent contractor, what that usually means is you work for yourself. If you're just a contractor, usually that means you work for some other company or organization, and then they take your services, and they take your services that they have responsibility for because they're your master, your employer, and then they provide those to another entity. So you might work on site somewhere else, but your actual employer is this other entity. Okay. Quick example. The IRS has come up with rules, and basically it says who controls the means and the methods of the work will help determine whether or not somebody is an employee with all these responsibilities that kick in for an employer, or whether or not somebody is this other category where you're not an employee. You're a contractor or an independent contractor. You're not an employee. Okay, so you're somebody. You wake up, wherever you are, you put on some sort of outfit. Let's say you put on a uniform. And in the place where you go to work, they tell you that what time you have to be there. And they say, hey, you have to be at this place at 9 a.m., Monday through Friday. You have to be in your uniform. You have to have your hat on and your name tag. You have to stand in the location we told you to stand, right here. And you have to answer this phone whenever it rings, and you have to say the script. You have to say exactly what we told you to say. So you have to wear what we told you. You have to stand where we told you. You have to say what we told you. You only get to leave your area when you get, quote, break time, and you need to go to the restroom, or you get a lunch, and now there'll be a certain amount of time. Maybe you get 15 minutes for your break, and then you'll get a lunch of, 45 minutes, and another break there, another 15-minute break, so even an hour. And they control all of this, right? So they control, where you are physically. They control what you're doing. They control what you're saying, what you're wearing. Wow. That's because they're the employer typically. And they're providing everything. So they pay the utilities for this place where you work, right? You're not worried about who pays for the light bill and the computer bill and the internet access. They pay for that. They provide you a computer. They provide you a phone. None of that comes out of your pocket. So all of these are the means and the method. Do you see what I mean? The IRS basically is saying, look, they're giving you everything. They're giving you the tools, and they're telling you how to do it. They're telling you what time to do it, what sequence to do it, what to say, what to wear, all this kind of stuff. So it looks more and more like you might be an employee. All right. Contractors do things, but ideally the test is that the contractor controls the outcome. So I've been a contractor the overwhelming majority of my professional career. As a contractor, a client will say, look, here's this task. We want you to go research this issue and write a report, and it's due, in 60 days. And that's it. So how I do it, what I research first, what I research second, it's up to me. What computer I use, I pay for the computer. It's mine. What time I start working on that, it's up to me. What I wear, it's up to me. Where I do my work, it's up to me. Maybe I'm at my house. Maybe I go to my office that I pay for. Maybe I go to a coffee shop or a cafe and sit there and work on my laptop. It doesn't matter. I'm in control of all the means and the methods, but I'm also paying for a lot of this, if not everything, right? Okay, so this is very simplified. I'll do another show on this to explain it in more detail, but the core issue before you start worrying about are you about to be fired is, can you be fired? If you're not an employee, technically you're not being fired. If you're a contractor, you're not being fired. Basically what they're saying is, we're just not hiring you again. A contractor, you might think similar to if you've ever hired like a plumber or an electrician to come to your house, or somebody to install, the utilities. Yeah, you did call them, and you are going to pay them money, right, for dealing with your clogged drain at the plumber, but they're not your employee. Like, they bring all their own stuff, right, to your house to, like, deal with the plug in your drain. You don't provide all the tools and all the things they need. They come in, they do their work, they have all their own stuff. You don't tell them how to do it. They're doing it on their own. Like, you tell them where the problem is. Hey, that bathroom right there, that sink right there, that's where the problem is. And then they go in there with their own tools, and then they spend all their own time, and they have their own process, and then they figure out what to do. That's a contractor. Do you see the difference? And if they're independent contractors, their own plumbing company. So it's like, they're Susie Smith, and it's Susie Smith's plumbing company. She owns that plumbing service, and she's there doing your work. So she works for herself. You pay her money, right? She has a fee, but she's not an employee. If you think she's a horrible plumber, you just don't hire her again. So you're not firing her. You see the difference? That's what we're talking about. So if you're not an employee, then we don't need to go any further. That's why we spend so much time on that. If you are an employee, now we need to talk. Are you really in danger of being fired, or are you just or do you have a personality where you're a little apprehensive? Some people have never in their entire life been fired, but they're just convinced that at any minute they're going to be fired, and it's not even logical. And when you start to talk to them, okay, why do you think that? They don't have any concrete, I don't even like that word usually, but they don't have any reasonable evidence to support their conclusion that they're about to be fired. So what I mean is, here's some warning signs that you might be about to be fired. If you're on a performance improvement plan, this is something you see, again, only with employees, right? Because the employer, the master, has all this responsibility for them. So, and they also have all the control, right? That's the benefit. Employer gets to tell you where to stand, where to sit, what to wear, how long to sit there, what to say. You have to smile at customers and make eye contact and all of this type of stuff. So if you're on a performance improvement plan, that means your employer has put on documentation that your performance is not what it needs to be, and they've told you what you need to do to improve. By the time this happens, you're usually headed toward the door in a very honest assessment. It's not a good sign. If you have been on progressive discipline, this is, again, where the employer puts on documentation. It used to be on paper, but I say documentation, it might be just online or whatever their record-keeping system is. And they document whatever it is that you've not done what you're supposed to, and they start giving you this progressive discipline. Typically, it gets progressively, right, each time, it gets more severe. So you might get a verbal warning, a written warning, suspension, termination. Once you get on that path, again, you're in trouble. Performance reviews. Performance reviews are awesome. They're something that I believe in. They're something I teach as a professor who teaches business law and leadership and management and international business. The performance review is a way for the employer to really sit down. It should be a two-way win-win, and it gives you an assessment. How are things going? If you have performance reviews or evaluations that show that you're not meeting or exceeding your requirements, you're in trouble. Are there exceptions to everything I'm saying? Yes. But typically, what happens, especially in larger organizations with a lot of employees, it's not like they don't pull the trigger quickly to terminate somebody, which they shouldn't necessarily. It depends on the facts. So they build up a record. What they're doing is documenting all the things that weren't what they're supposed to be, so that they're getting ready to pull the trigger, but they're having paperwork to show we pulled the trigger and terminated you and fired you because of your work. It wasn't because of your gender. It wasn't because of your age. It wasn't because of your religion. There's laws that say you can't make decisions about these things. So what they're doing is showing, here are all the things you failed to do related to your job. And they're documenting it, and that's why you're in trouble. All right. And this what will be part one of a two-part program. To cut to the bottom line, if you are an employee, right, who controls the means and the methods of the work? Are you like the plumber who comes on site to a client, or is it more somebody tells you what to wear, somebody tells you where to sit, somebody pays for the computer, somebody pays for the phone, somebody pays for the utilities, somebody tells you literally, when can you go to the bathroom? They're controlling the means and methods. Looks like you're an employee. Are you seeing warning signs? So it's not just your paranoia, but you really do see, I've been having meetings with people about my performance. There's paperwork about my performance. They've been asking me to sign off on performance evaluations or reviews that are not showing I'm super awesome. They have given me a performance improvement plan. These are warning signs. All right, for the summation of this part one, if you're in trouble, you have got to immediately shut up. I'll explain in part two what I mean in detail, but basically that's what it sounds like. Shut up. Don't talk to a coworker. Don't call your best friend in the office. Don't gossip about this. Don't go to somebody else that works there and ask them, what do you think I should do? Here's what the manager sent me. These are all disastrous, horrible decisions for people who probably would be witnesses against you in the future. I'll go over it more in part two. You need to start collecting evidence. You need copies of everything. Your performance reviews, handbooks, employee policies and procedure manuals. You need it all because you're not going to have access to it. And you need to go to a lawyer now. Do not wait until they fire you to go to the lawyer. You have so much more power. I'll talk about this in episode 2, to go to the lawyer before they fire you. All right. Thank you for joining me. You can always come to CourtneyAnderson.com, and I look forward to you continuing to be part of our community. Thank you.